Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is your host Carmina bringing you another astrology video. So today we are going to analyze the chart of a serial killer, and that serial killer being Ted Bundy. You've probably noticed that there's a new Netflix documentary which I just watched, the Ted Bundy tapes, and that shows a lot more insight into the mind of this person and into the life of this person. And yeah, I was very curious. I was very intrigued. I wanted to see the chart of a person who could commit such atrocities and find some patterns, of course, and maybe also find some sort of explanations to why this is happening. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys. The type of astrology that I'm using is I use Vedic principles with tropical signs. So the signs are the same as in Western astrology. The nakshatras that I use, the lunar mansions, are the same as in sidereal astrology. Of course, depends which ayanamsha, which calculation option you use. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see here, this person has a Leo ascendant, and on the ascendant, what do we see? We see Saturn and Pluto. That's already a very tough combination because, of course, Saturn relates to death, it relates to letting go of things, and in combination with Pluto, there is this person is a person that is like a heavy presence. It's like it has the capacity to bring down the environment wherever they go. And of course, not everybody who has this is a serial killer. Just bear in mind that we are looking at patterns and things adding up on top of other things. So just keep that in mind before you make any judgments about anyone, okay? So the ascendant is the person's body. It's also the person's path. The person had a very tough path because of these two extremely heavy planets there, and especially because Saturn in the sign of Leo is what we call starved, because the sun is an enemy. So Saturn in Leo doesn't feel comfortable at all. Saturn is the planet that has the energy of doing repetitive tasks. Is more like the energy of serving rather than leading. And when Saturn is in Leo, Saturn is forced kind of to lead. It's forced to be in a position of authority, and it doesn't like that at all. This Saturn in Leo combination can be also very sexually inclined. It can be also very voyeuristic, and of course, because it's a Leo ascendant, it can also be very charming. And of course, this person, Ted Bundy, his face, his appearance was quite charming. Yes, people were quite taken, by surprise when they heard what he did, and his family didn't believe it. He even got married to a woman, and she didn't believe it until he confessed, which was like 2 years before he got executed. So it's this person who could very well and who could very easily lie. So that's one of the things. Yes, we also look here, we have Pluto. Pluto has the energy of smashing things, of breaking things, of totally destroying things. If we would associate Pluto to a principle in Vedic astrology, that would be Shiva, the destroyer. It's the energy that finishes things off. Of course, that can be used for personal growth, or it can be used for other things like this person did. Okay, so now we have in mind the ascendant. Then we look at the other planets. We see that he's got a lot of planets in Scorpio. In the 4th house, I'm using equal houses. So he has Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury here in the 4th house. Normally you would think, oh my God, so many benefics, wonderful. Well, it's not really good to have Jupiter and Venus together because Jupiter is starved. So Venus and Mercury are enemies to Jupiter. So in this case, Jupiter is quite starved, although it's in a friend sign of Mars. Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. So that means what Jupiter represents, which is children, which is the goodness in one's heart, which is having a broader vision of life, a lot of wisdom, that gets very starved. So that gets very diminished. If we look at the condition, at the planetary condition, we see that Jupiter is quite starved. So it was difficult for this person to find the goodness in life. But of course, I'm telling you, one factor does not make one a serial killer. It's like a tallying up and adding up of factors. So here, this combination, Jupiter-Venus, can also be a womanizing combination. And here we also have Venus and Mercury, which is a very flirty combination. So a person who's, excessively interested in women. And also with this Saturn here in Leo and with Pluto here in Leo, person who's very interested in sex, who thinks that they can somehow assert their leadership, their dominance through sex. And then what else do we have here? So anyway, and also Scorpio, of course, is the sign that it's connected to the genitalia, the genital organs. It's the sign of inner battles, the sign of privacy. Venus is very good here. So somehow that shows that this person, he found some soothing with what he was doing. So although he realized that it wasn't good, he had some sort of tranquility. He found it like practical. Somehow he found explanations and reasonings for it. And then we have these planets here in Sagittarius. We have the moon, we have Mars, we have the sun, and we also have a planet that's not embodied. Well, it's not a planet, it's a point. We have the south node. So the south node always shows where the person has been. It shows past life patterns. It shows where the person is very skilled and confident. Here, the person is very confident in their ideas, in their philosophy, because Jupiter is here, but somehow it's disappointed also in that philosophy. And it's a more warrior-like philosophy, because always when we see that Mars and the South Node are together, we know that the person in a past life had a warrior-like energy. And we also see the sun, which is the other kshatriya, fiery planet. So there's a lot of fire. The sun and Mars together, especially in a fire sign, they are very hot combination. They make the person very aggressive. The moon here with Mars, that's a combination. It can be interpreted for also useful things, but it can also make a person very crude. And it's associated to crude dealings like alcohol, prostitution, and things like that. So there's an emphasis on fire, a fire that's coming from some past life patterns, and this fire that is quite disturbed, because we're also going to be looking at the nakshatras, at the lunar mansions, and we're going to be finding more insight. So one of the important things that define this behavior of his is the shame that he has there in the fifth house. So there are two ways where planets can be shamed. If you have the south node and the planet in the fifth house, then you have shame. And then if you have the south node and the malefic with the planet, then you also have shame. So we see that he has double shame there, because it's in the fifth house and because you have the south node with the Mars there. So that shame, unfortunately, brings a lot of negativity to the person's actions. It's like debilitating to do or to positively express the energies of those planets. So there's a lot of frustration, a lot of shame in expressing also his sexuality, because Mars is, sexuality among other things. And there's shame in expressing his path. There's shame in his mind, in his subjective consciousness, which is the moon. So that's like one of the key factors for him there. That this person has all embodied planets, personal planets. I'm talking about the planets from Sun to Saturn. So Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. These planets are in 3 signs, 2 of which are fire signs. And one is a water sign, but it's ruled by a fiery planet, by Mars. So there is an excess of fire in this chart, so which can lead to aggressiveness. And another thing that's interesting is people who have all embodied planets in 3 signs are more prone to having a life full of challenges and rejoice in doing like battles and obstacles and having this martial energy. In Vedic astrology, we talk about the 4 aspects of life, which are Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Dharma, the self, what is true for the self. Artha, the financial well-being. Kama, desire. And Moksha, liberation. Certain combinations between the lords of these houses, because fire houses, so the first, the fifth, and the ninth house, their lords are called Dharma lords, and the second, the sixth, and the 10th are called Artha lords, and the third, the 7th, and the 11 are called Kama lords, and Kama relates to desire. And the rest of the houses, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th, are the Moksha Lord, which relate to liberation and also more hidden preoccupations. And here we see this person has a lot of planets in angles and trines. Like all his embodied planets are in angles and trines. That's a combination that makes a person very influential, very famous also. We also see that the Lord of the Ascendant, the first Lord, is here in the 5th house. That's a combination for success. And it's manifested in the dasha, especially when the dasha of that first Lord is running, when the Sun dasha is running. So that's when this person became public. So for him, getting caught was kind of like putting on a show. Like this was his chance to fame. He always wanted to be famous as a politician, as a lawyer. He never could become a lawyer. He didn't finish law school, but somehow he managed to co-represent himself in a trial, although he didn't have any lawyer qualification. He was a very charming individual, and he was a very resourceful individual. His soul planet, a planet that's very important in his path of life, was Mercury. So this was a person that was very resourceful. He escaped from prison, from being detained not once but twice. So can you imagine? Like he escaped twice. So he was very resourceful. He was very determined in doing what he had to do. Unfortunately, what he had to do was not something positive. So I even remember in the documentary the judge saying that if this person would have applied their knowledge in another area, he could have become a very good lawyer, or something else, he could have done with his life. And the judge was expressing his sadness that Ted Bundy did not choose another path, but chose this negative path. So this person, Ted Bundy, who was a very charming individual who got people to come back to his van by wearing a cast. He was like a con man. He was lying. He was so charming. He could charm people to follow him, and that way he managed to kill a lot of people. And he killed girls. He only killed women and girls from the age of 17. I think the oldest was 21 or 24, something like that. So he had something against women. And if we look here, we also have to notice that all his planets are in angles and trines, which make him a very influential and famous person. He's the likes of a politician or a very charismatic media figure. He was like always putting on a show for the journalists while he was cross-examining a witness that happened to be his girlfriend, that he wouldn't have had the right to cross-examine because he never finished his law degree. But he proposed to her, so he was doing this like television show. He knew the names of the journalists. Like, the journalists were very surprised that he was probably watching every piece of news with him in that. So he really wanted to be famous. He wanted like the Leo. He wanted celebrity, the celebrity status. But unfortunately, he did it through a very devious way. And I'm also gonna enumerate some other combinations that make his chart like a very significant one, because he has, as I was saying, all the planets in angles and trines, so in the first, fifth, and fourth houses, and that's called the Varaha Boar Yoga. So this is a combination connected to Vishnu, and this manifests success, unfortunately, not for the wrong reasons in this case. And he also has Srinata Yoga. That means that Venus, the ninth lord, and Mercury are in angles or trines and in non-friendly or exaltation signs. So that's a combination that makes a person clever. It makes a person very eloquent. It makes a person get involved with law, get involved with order, and doing something of importance. This person also has Shrikanta Yoga, which means that the ascendant lord, the sun, and the moon in angles or trines and in non-friendly or exaltation signs, a combination connected to Shiva, the destroyer. So a combination that shows that the person is involved in something that has a destructive aspect. So not only does he have this Saturn, Pluto on the ascendant, which has the energy of Shiva, destructive, he also has this Shrikanta Yoga that also has a destructive energy. And then when we look at the nakshatras, the lunar mansions, we'll see like more things that make him have this destructive energy. Then he also has the Sarasvati Yoga. So Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus in an angle, trine, or second house, and Jupiter in its own exaltation or friendly sign. This is, Sarasvati is a goddess of eloquence and learning. So this gives the person skill, intelligence, and he was very skilled, he was very intelligent in orchestrating what he did, orchestrating the whole show that he was doing. So yeah, he also has another yoga, like perfected works yoga, unfortunately, because the 10th lord is on an angle with a benefic, and it means that one's deeds and efforts will bear fruit. So he said 30 women, but there could be even 36 women or more. There's another combination that he has with all malefics in angles, or all benefics in angles, which is the imperishable yoga. And this gives a lot of fame also. Now let's talk a little bit about the nakshatras, the lunar mansions. We see here that in his chart, the embodied planets are in Aslesha, Vishaka, Anuradha, and Yeshta nakshatra. And I made a few notes about these nakshatras here. So the Aslesha nakshatra is considered to be a sharp and harsh nakshatra, and is connected to Shiva. Remember, we mentioned Shiva again, this principle of destruction. This nakshatra is connected to con artists, thieves, and lawyers, among other things. So if you have planets in this Aslesha nakshatra, just don't think the worst, but I'm just like piling up things after things after things that confirm this violent and conniving nature of this person. It's also of a Rakshasa nature, which means a demon, because nakshatras, lunar mentions, can be of human nature, it can be of divine nature, or it can be of demonic nature. And this is a demonic nature nakshatra on his ascendant. I'm also going to say that one of the journalists who interviewed him said that when he was talking about his murders, he didn't talk in the first person like I did them. The journalist kind of he guided him into saying, okay, if you could get inside the mind of this killer, how would you act? And then Ted Bundy described his actions as if he were in the mind, of his own mind, because he was actually describing his own crimes. And the journalist was saying that when he was talking about these things, his eyes would get pitch black, although his eyes were naturally blue. And also Ted Bundy was saying that he was possessed by some entity that was, asking him to do things. But you can't take 100% that for sure, because he was known for lying. And in the end, he said, I did these things not because of pornography, because he used to blame pornography for his, sexual fetishes connected to violence and everything. But then in the end, he said, I did it because I wanted to. So, and then we also have some planets in the Vishaka nakshatra. That's also a harsh nakshatra, and it's auspicious for harsh activities like plotting, spying, scheming, police and military action. It's also of Rakshasa nature and connected to Shiva. So you see how many things add up together. So this was Yeshta nakshatra. And then we have Vishaka nakshatra, which is of mixed nature. So it also has the sharp quality. It's also of Rakshasa demonic nature. And it's connected to soldiers, it's connected to criminals, and also policemen. And Vishaka is auspicious for aggressive or warlike activities, harsh activities, and strong mental focus. In order to carry out over 36 murders in 6 or 7 states, he was pretty cool. He was pretty focused, unfortunately, for the people who died. Then he also has in Anuradha Nakshatra some planets there. He has Mercury and the Sun. And Anuradha, as contrary from the other nakshatras, has a soft and friendly nature, but it is also connected to hidden activities, to spies, to research, to exploring nature. When he escaped the first time, he went to the mountain and he lived there. And he was very skilled with going to the mountains. When he was a child, he used to go into the forest a lot, and unfortunately later on he buried a lot of his victims in the forest. Anuradha has a friendly nature, so that's why some people were fooled by him. He had these friendly planets. He had this charm here, in the 4th house. The sun, was in Anuradha Nakshatra. People were falling for his bullshit. To say that, they found him quite charming. There were a lot of people that were rallying and thought he was wrongly accused. So, and it's also interesting to note that why would a person do something like that? Well, we can say he had some mental illness. He has a combination for mental illness. He has birth on Saturday or Tuesday, or in the aura of Mars or Saturn, the Sun and the Moon in the 9th, 5th, or 1st, and Jupiter in the 3rd, or an angle indicates one fickle-minded like a madcap. So that is a combination from the old text that he has. So we can blame it on mental illness. We can also say, okay, he was possessed by an entity, he was possessed by a demon, he has so many demonic nakshatras, his eyes became pitch black, according to the journalist that was interviewing him. Or we can also regard him that he was an instrument of the time. He was an instrument of fate, because if we look, he has so many combinations that show that he was pursuing his dharma, he was pursuing his purpose in life. So how can a murderer pursue his dharma? Well, Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, He said about Hitler that he embodied the dark side, the shadow side of 78 million Germans who were anti-Semitic, and that's why Hitler became such a figure of power, and he became like the tool that would unfortunately kill so many people during the Second World War. And we can extrapolate and we can say, okay, Ted Bundy was a product of society. He embodied the dark side, the shadow side of millions of male Americans who were threatened by this rise of women, by this feminism, by the feminist movement, by women demanding their rights, by women demanding higher wages. Because, you know, Ted Bundy only killed women, only targeted young, very young and young women, the women who were just like the future, the generation, the landmark for this revolution of women's rights. So I think we can also interpret it that way, like a force, like an avatar that was represented an embodiment of the shadow side of the men in America that felt threatened. So yeah, this is my assessment for today. Of course, there's always a lot more to say. This is what I said today. Let me know in the comments if you have something to add. I'll talk to you later. I'll see you with more card videos, more astrology videos. I'm also holding astrology and card classes if you're interested. And as always, for readings, you can contact me via my website. I'm going to post it down below. See you soon. Bye.